And we are live, and I think my microphone's on, which is a good thing. Good morning, everybody. It is Memorial Day. Shout out to all of our veterans who gave their lives and volunteered to give their lives in support of freedom, not always applied or deployed accurately by our federal government. All right, today we have a special guest, but I'm not going to bring him on quite yet. I actually want to say a few things first. Guys and gals, we are in the midst of the beginning of the super cycle. Now, today, after the interview with my new friend, David Branscombe, I'm going to show you guys why I am so aware of where we're at now. We are literally at a place in history that has never happened before and will never happen again. We are at a point in human history where, for the first time in human history, at least to my knowledge, I don't know what happened 100,000 years ago and how advanced they were. They could have had an actual decentralized currency 100,000 years ago. I don't know. Wasn't there. But for the first time, we have a global, decentralized, limited supply currency and information verification network system that is incorruptible, uncontrollable, and basically you cannot manipulate it for long. You can adjust price slightly and for a limited amount of time if you have enough capital, but you cannot hold it down for long. It is too decentralized, and the rate of adoption is way too rampant. We are hitting the going viral moment. And as that happens, and this is what I worry about with the average Joes and the average Janes out there, the price is going to rise so quickly. That's what everyone says, the, what do they call it? The actual, like, God candle or something like that. It's going to happen so quickly that the average Joe, the average Jane, is actually going to see it happen and then realize, damn it, I could have front run all of this action. Now, mind you, they're going to jump in. They're going to get involved some way, one way or another. But they're going to get involved after or during the corporate adoption and the overtaking of the global monetary trust system, because that's what we're really doing. People are shifting from a system they don't trust. Russia doesn't trust China. China corporations, they don't trust American corporations. No one has any trust in the global currency right now, which is the dollar, because it was set up so it is controllable and can be altered and manipulated via the Federal Reserve interest rate and other tools, as they like to call them. And as this adoption grows, it's just going to take off. We have a question here from Mr. Buzz Killington. What a great name. Hey, Ben, what will trigger the God candle? Supply and demand will trigger it. There's such a limited supply available for purchase. And with Bitcoin, how the blockchain works, the receipt of the asset is the exchange of the asset. When you exchange Bitcoin, the record of the exchange is the receiving of the actual Bitcoin. That means real time volume recognition. And that once the supply hits, let's just put it this way. That's why I've said this is the last up and huge drop cycle. We're not going to have a huge jump up and then a huge drop down again. It's not going to happen because this is the last super cycle of the Bitcoin. And when I say super cycle, what I mean is as the FOMO happens, there's so many people in the world and so many entities that the FOMO will be constant because once it's triggered, it is the equivalent of a remember when you used to have actual like firecrackers where you'd light at one end, and as the FOMO, the fire would go down, it hit each actual firecracker and it would pop. That's what is going to happen for the next 10 years, folks. Each jump will trigger another area of interest that will FOMO in. And then that one will go up. And then that will trigger another FOMO, which will trigger another FOMO. They tell us we have 8 billion people in this world. Eventually, all of them will be on Bitcoin. All of them. All right, now I want to bring on our special guest, who I met we met in Miami. He was on a panel, and I was incredibly impressed. You, you guys know me. It takes a lot for me to actually be impressed with someone knowledgeable of the old system, because their knowledge is usually that's their anchor. That's their pitch. I know the old system. I know how to run a business in the old system. Well, when I actually heard him talk, when I heard Dave talk, what I heard was someone with the knowledge of the old system, with the recognition of, oh shit, the new system is here. And what actually makes him so unique was that he was able to recognize it and accept it. A lot of people, this is where they fuck up. They see the new system, but they think, nah, that'll never work because it's up against the old system. Well, David was smart enough and had such a deep understanding of it that he, like me, recognizes it's inevitable. It isn't if it happens. It's how quickly it happens. All right, let's bring on David. What do you say, handsome?
Hey, good morning. How are you doing?
Oh, brother, I am living life and loving
it. Yeah, I didn't know. I guess I didn't think about it when I made the commitment to be on the show. If it was going to be Memorial Day. So thanks to everybody out there that has served and continues to serve. It is. I'm not a veteran myself, but I have some family members, my business partners. It's the Bitcoin Veterans Group is an impressive bunch of guys. So just want to take a second, first of all, and say thank you to everybody. In fact, if I'm saying this right, my first CEO in the Bitcoin space, who basically dragged me into this crazy space, senior petty officer, first class, if I'm saying that right, with the U.S. Navy, Jim Cohen. So he's a neighbor across the street from me, and he's the one that dragged me into this crazy Bitcoin world. So just want to say thank you to everybody out there.
Awesome. And he's a coffee guy. Hey, is your coffee mug, is that Hank Williams Jr.?
It's not, but it does look pretty close, right? This is from a place called Imperial Coffee in Amarillo, Texas. They make they took basically an old movie theater that was called the Imperial Palace. It's like kind of like the Paramount, theaters that are spread across the Southwest. But this one, so they turned it into a coffee shop. One of their claims to fame is they have a cup of coffee they call the $20 cup of coffee. I don't know if it's worth $20, but it's pretty impressive. It's not like that, coffee beans that are literally roasted because they fish them out of cat poop, stuff like that. It's not quite that exotic. Have you heard of that, Ben? It's crazy.
Oh my God.
These cats, wild cats, eat this coffee bean, and they eat it for the fruit that is around the bean, right? And then the people will literally go and fish it out of their scat and sift it and get these coffee beans. They'll clean them, but they don't roast them because by then they've been through the warm body of the cat. They are basically roasted, and they will grind them up and use it to make coffee. and it's
Yeah.
supposed to be the most expensive, craziest coffee in the world. But
And this is my theory on this. The reason it's the most expensive is because only the dumbest motherfuckers are going to buy that shit. It's because, hey, if they're willing to
yeah,
drink coffee from like cat's shit,
yeah,
then you know they're dumb enough to pay for it.
yeah. This luckily this cup is not that, but it is a really unique, rare bean, and the taste of it is kind of surprising. Also, it's there's some show to it, just like when you order something at a restaurant on flambe where they come and they light it on fire and stuff. It's like I think it's they do an AeroPress. Somebody comes out who's been trained to do it. All that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it's fun, and I didn't do it myself. I shared it with three other. I shared it with two other people, my dad and my sister at the time. So this was just to commemorate. I'm kind of a coffee mug junkie. Like wherever I go, I got to get a T-shirt or a coffee mug. And so I know I see that.
I will send you.
Mm.
I have this one. I have one for Sarasota, one for our club up in Nashville, one for our club up in Massachusetts, and I'll actually send you some coffee mugs. You love them. They're very heavy.
Oh, I like that too. Yeah, this one's you can't tell, but the weight of it, it's like solid. So yeah.
Yep.
One of my favorite.
Holds heat. Well,
yeah, they have it's like anything in life, it's like you attach these memories and things to these things that you have. And so like one of my favorites is I have a Waffle House one that they don't sell. You're not really supposed to have them, but on my 30th birthday, after a late night of debauchery, at like 2 a.m, me and two buddies I've known since college, freshman year of college, we're eating at Waffle House, and waitress comes over and says, "Hey, you guys are in a good mood. Good night." She's kind of social, and my buddy goes, "Yeah, it's his 30th birthday." And I was like, "Yeah, just having a good time, hanging out, but not going to cause too much trouble. So we're going to just eat and get out of here." Because at 2 a.m. at a Waffle House, it gets really rowdy. And
that's where it all starts.
It's right.
Just as fucking Kid Rock.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, if you find yourself at a Waffle House, just eat and go home, or just go home. But when she brought the check, she brought 2 cups wrapped up in a brown paper bag and said, "Don't tell anybody, happy birthday." So it's like you get those cool memories. I get that with the swag that I bring home from like Bitcoin events, like the hat that was at the Bitcoin Day Miami where we met. I've got tons of T-shirts. This one is from FOMO 21 from Neil Jacobs.
Yes, I love that.
There will be Bitcoin, just like there will be blood. I love this one, especially being from Texas where I'm at. And these things are interesting because they remind us. I think that's what draws people in about Bitcoin. It's not the money side of it, and it's the people that are passionate about it. It's who shares the message, and if they, kind of the friendship they get from those people. And so these things are nice little reminders. Like when I'm home, like I've got a block clock, behind the monitor here to show me what's going on. And it's all of those kinds of, and I remember where I got that and who told me. It's like, "Oh, you should get this. It's pretty cool." It's those kinds of things that the little tchotchkes just kind of help assist us with the memories and things like that.
Yeah. And I think because you and I we actually went to the side and you talked after you had actually come off of the panel. And with us and people like us, we don't we're not really in it for the money. We're in it for the freedom.
Yeah.
And we view it as the more Bitcoin we hold, the more of our own freedom we hold.
Yeah.
And that is why right now, and this is why why this episode has the actual title it has. We are now in this super cycle. If you have heard lately, like what Trump is actually saying, it's like he's literally said on day one, I'm going to pardon Ross. Now, for all of us who are deep in Bitcoin, we know who Ross Elbridge is. Right?
His mom was at Bitcoin Day Miami.
Yes,
I got to meet her and shake her hand for the first time. Yeah, just briefly.
Yep, and Trump knows the friggin' battle we have been in trying to free this guy. And he says, day one, he's out. He's out of jail. We're sending him home. Mm-hmm. When you say things, and we know Trump will do it, all right? We know he'll do it. When you say things like that, and how I'm 100% behind Bitcoin and crypto development in America. Mm-hmm. When you have one of the two major politicians running for president saying, I got your back, guys. Let's rock and roll. Let's kick some ass. Mm-hmm. What that does is that unifies on freedom. And that's what we have going on right now is Trump. There are people who are voting for Trump that hate every other aspect about Trump. And they're voting for him because all he's talking about is freedom. I'm tearing down the federal government. Listen to Vivek lately. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that Vivek and Trump have had hours, and I mean hours worth of one-on-one locked door discussion on implementing the chopping the snake's head off.
Yeah.
And explain what you do and
sure.
what your involvement is with actual Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And give us your why.
Okay. Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, what you just mentioned is probably a big part of the why. And it comes down to that inevitability, right? Like, so I think when you talk about Trump, he started out, basically saying he just thought, Bitcoin was a scam and a Ponzi. And then he eventually said he still thought it was a scam, but he said it's going to compete with the US dollar. And he wanted the US dollar to be the number one currency. As he was saying these types of things, it was about the same time that I was kind of getting into Bitcoin, kind of going through that same evolution myself. And I realized it was an inevitability. So for someone like Trump, who is at heart a capitalist, right? I think he does make a really good nobody's perfect, but he does make a really good leader and U.S. president because he's willing to give the credit where the credit is due. Don't get me wrong. He's, there's a lot of things he does incorrectly in business. It's unfair, I think. But for the most part, if an idea is good enough and he sees the value, it has value, eventually he will come around to it, right? Because that's his ultimate goal is basically turning the U.S. into a profitable machine again, whether it be jobs, whether it be new companies, new developments, technology, geopolitical positioning, whatever it is, he's a profitability maximalist. And that's kind of what I considered myself to be. So I mentioned my CEO across the street dragging me into Bitcoin. I was actually it was during, I think, late 2021, mid to late 2021. I was building a raised grow bed in my backyard. I have a koi pond, and I was basically turning it into using that koi pond to create a raised grow bed. And he came over because I was working in the garage, asked me what I was doing. I showed him. He said, well, how'd you figure this out? I said, well, we just, I was looking at YouTube. I was going down a rabbit hole. I was not in a good job at the time, going through the pandemic. It was, life was a pain. And I just kind of got in a rut and decided I was going to do something. So I went and bought a whole bunch of stuff with a little bit of a plan and just decided I was going to do this because I needed something new to focus on. I needed to learn something new. And he said, well, you figured all this out. What else do you know about hydrodynamics? And I said, well, this is it. Like, I studied the Venturi effect to oxygenate the water, a Bell siphon to do a flood and drain system. Calculated, the flow rate needed based on the volume, all that kind of stuff. And he said, what do you know about Bitcoin mining? I said, nothing. He said, what do you know about immersion cooling? I said, even less than I know about Bitcoin mining. What's immersion cooling? So we start talking. Well, that company had just provided Riot, the publicly traded company, 200 megawatts worth of immersion cooling. And and I came on as their VP of business development and helped them develop, basically sell another, I don't know, like maybe 30 or 40 megawatts total worth of immersion cooling. I had a bit of, I just thought I was doing a fiat job. I just thought I was basically going to make some money. And I thought eventually I would work for, building traditional data centers, standard server form factor, not these crazy Bitcoin miners, but they ended up being the bulk of our business, really all of it. And had a falling out with that company, and then went off and decided to be an immersion cooling consultant on my own. Couple nice gentlemen out of Miami gave me a shot to help them build a 16 megawatt mine. By the time we were done with it, 8 megawatts was air cooled, 8 megawatts was immersion cooled. I got to help a friend build a 2 megawatt off-grid gas mining site at the actual gas well. That was interesting. And I thought to myself, well, this is really cool because all these guys on grid get told when they do and you can and can't mine, right? Like in Texas, it's called demand response. They send a demand and you have to respond. I liked the idea of not having to be, actually mine off grid or be mine on grid, with the power. Then I had someone, what was interesting though, I came in, I wasn't a Bitcoiner really until, in that first job, but I was working with Bitcoiners. Everyone just assumed I was a Bitcoiner. And so nobody really kind of orange pilled me. They just all assumed I was already there. And so working with these amazing people, seeing their conviction on what Bitcoin was, how they committed their life and their work to it, just slowly over time, I started learning more and more about it, what it was. And that's when the why really didn't come. I didn't understand it until really probably about 8 months ago. And this is the conversation you and I had kind of off to the side after the panel. for the first time going through, listening to Michael Saylor talk and reading the Bitcoin Standard and all that kind of stuff, I didn't understand Bitcoin exactly. I still didn't understand exactly how it worked, but I understood how broken our dollar system was. And I started to understand how it steals from you, how it steals your time and your energy from you, because it's manipulated in a way that makes it impossible for most people to get ahead. Some people get ahead with huge leaps and bounds, but most people cannot just do solid, steady work in small increases and actually get ahead anymore. You used to be able to do that in this country, but you can't do that anymore.
Yep. Hang on one second. We have an ad from our sponsor. Then we'll be right back.
You got it.
Hang on, guys. We'll be right back. Word from the sponsor. You know who it is. CALIX Solutions.
Ever wondered how safe your online activities really are? How secure is your digital footprint? In the vast realm of the internet, privacy and security are paramount. Without adequate protection, your personal data might be at risk. There are solutions to these issues, and today we're going to talk about two of them. Introducing Liberty laptops from CALIX Solutions. These cutting-edge devices are meticulously designed to bolster online privacy, providing you the liberty to surf the internet incognito. The World Wide Web can be a wild frontier, but with Liberty laptops, your online privacy is always protected. We also present you crypto laptops, designed with cryptocurrency users in mind. Equipped to support a myriad of wallets and exchanges, these laptops are tailored for seamless cryptocurrency transactions. They offer enhanced security protocols to keep your digital assets safe. Crypto laptops ensures a secure and smooth cryptocurrency experience. It's time to take control of your online privacy and security. Venture over to CALIX Solutions and explore our Liberty laptops and crypto laptops. Don't forget, our affiliate program lets you earn $50 per sale. Visit calixsolutions.io now or call 702-845-8276 for more information, because your online safety is our priority.
And we're back. Yep. If you guys are interested in a crypto laptop or a Liberty laptop, just give us a ring or send us an email. All right, David, let's jump right back in on your road to Orangeville.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, we were, I was, getting deeper and deeper into the fiat money study, and from a historical standpoint, read the Bitcoin Standard, read The Creature from Jekyll Island, and which is interesting because I've actually been to an election administrator conference on Jekyll Island, so that was kind of a weird connect the dots sort of thing. But I started to realize when it comes to the inflation of a money supply and how easily it can be manipulated, that is a direct connection to our time and our work. So all the effort I put forth. So, and I started doing the math on how many months out of the year I had to work before I was actually getting to keep any of my value. And in the US, if you're doing well and you're playing your cards right and taking advantage of every, tax law you can, maybe you only have to work 3 or 4 months. But I was just thinking to myself, well, over the course of my lifetime as I work, 3 or 4 months, let's say it's 4 months, every 3 years, for every 3 years, one of those years is given to the US government, right? And I was like, that doesn't seem fair. If I work 30 years over my life, that's 10 years I'm working, so just to pay taxes, right? Not even build up my own personal wealth and things like that.
What a great way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. Looking at it in a larger view really shocks the hell out of you, because you're like, wait, a 30-year career
Mhm.
10 years of that is actually paid to the government.
Sure.
What I never looked at it that far out.
If you're doing 20 to age 65, that's 15 years, right? That's 15 years that you're actually giving to the US government over the course of your life. So think about what you could do 8 hours a day for 15 years with, your loved ones, with your family, with your children, with your church, with, if you didn't have to worry about someone taking your money or you being in debt to somebody else, what you could do with that, right? So I started equating that to the actions, the time I had. I was really lucky for a while, for 3 or 4 years when my boys were younger, to have a job where I could work 2 or 3 hours a week or 2 or 3 hours a day, and I could make at the time what I considered to be a decent living. And I was able to go, meet my boys up at school for lunch almost every day. I was able to pick them up from school. I was able to coach, youth football, basketball, baseball, do scouts. I was a scoutmaster, do all of this stuff. And I realized it's like the average person does not get a chance to do this. I was very, very lucky for those few years. And then when I start equating that time and that effort to experiences and things like that, you just realize what the theft is. And then as I'm going through this process, really kind of connecting those dots, I am slowly moving upstream in the Bitcoin mining space. So I started out on the immersion cooling side, then got a little bit into Bitcoin mining operations, understanding the infrastructure and hardware, the electrical engineering required, got to, build a site from ground up, a few sites actually from ground up, and start to study, heat recapture and some other things, some cool stuff off grid, gas production, power production. And I started to make this connection. I was like, okay, this is Bitcoin is the first money that we have had, or not the first money clearly, but it's the best, closest connection we've ever had between money and energy. And I kind of describe it as, you wake up in the morning, you get up and you need energy. Throw your feet out of the bed, or, walk to the restroom or walk to get your coffee, making your coffee, the heat required for that. Everything in this universe is a transfer of energy from one direction to another, right? It can't be created or destroyed. It can only be moved from one place to another. So that's what we're doing. And we do that with everything: the food we eat, cars we drive, the work we do, moving physically, moving digitally. It all requires energy. So that really is the currency of the universe, right? Is energy and energy transfer. So if what they're actually doing, if you're debasing the way that I store my energy long term, the way that I convert my energy into another form of energy, like the food, groceries I buy, or the house the shelter I live in, or the trips and experiences I take, or just being able to get to and from church on Sunday, all of these kinds of things. If you're debasing the way that I store that energy, you're stealing from me. And so Bitcoin, I realized, it's like, wait, that money supply can't be manipulated. I was watching your intro and you're talking about, we have this type of money. It can't be inflated. It can't be manipulated in that way. I was like, well, this is where I should be storing all of my energy. This is where all of my energy should go. I can't, there's no reason to store it anywhere else. And then I start to look back over the years and I'm like, okay, it seemed that every time I got a little bit ahead, I got a little bit of money ahead, something would come up that would knock all that away, right? Something would happen that would knock all that away. And when I was younger, the rule was, have 6 months in reserve just in case. Okay. So I'd get 6 months in reserve. And then they would say, and then I'd wake up 3-4 years later. My life hadn't really changed all that much, no additional bills, but they'd say, oh, that same amount won't cover 6 months anymore. So I would have to put more in. And then again, 2 or 3 years later, and then again, 2 or 3 years later. And then in the last 3 to 5 years, that increase has been insane. Like the average person cannot get a raise, a big enough raise fast enough to outpace what has been happening the last 3 or 4 years. And I thought, oh, I'm just old, right? I like to, I'm old now, so I like to complain about how the good old days, everything was cheaper and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the case. It has moved so quickly. Even my, 14-year-old sees that. He's like, Dad, why is, a McDonald's combo meal $8 when it was like, $5 just 2 or 3 years ago, right? So we're seeing this happen, and everybody's seeing it happen. And you can see it online. You can see it with younger generations. I'm a Gen Xer, but you can see it with younger generations that are like, we'll never get ahead. They're doing the math. They can't get ahead, and they see it and they know it. And I decided, if I'm going to store my value, I'm going to store it in Bitcoin. And it was super scary. It's still super scary, right? But when you do that, the usual things that stress you out don't stress you out anymore. Like if you have to take on a little bit of debt, to pay off something or whatever, you understand how debt works, and you understand, okay, even if I'm paying a little more in interest, this debt that's, let's say $10,000 worth of debt that I need for a business or to do something on my home or whatever, I do have the Bitcoin to cash out and pay for it, but I'm just going to pay, payments on it, because I know that as the debt is inflated, that $10,000, without me even making payments on it, next year is only going to be worth about $9,000. And then the year after that, it's only going to be worth $8,100, right? It literally, the debt decreases in value. If your money decreases in value, the value of your debt decreases just as quickly, right? So it's like you look at everything from a different standpoint. Your energy is safe. Your time is safe. It's not being stolen from you. And the volatility goes up and down. It's interesting. You mentioned, you think this is the final, super cycle. You might be right, because these crab walks, long crab walks that we've seen, shows that the asset is maturing, and we might just see a slow climb that just basically matches, whatever money system kind of gets injected into the system. As more and more people realize that this is a better store of value, we'll see. We'll still see one really big run, no question. But I think it is interesting. At some point, you're going to hit that bell curve with adoption, and Bitcoin just is, right? It just is going to be that what it is. And once we realize that and we assign that value to it, the volatility won't matter, because everything will be denominated in Bitcoin. So just take what you normally look at the US dollar as your store of value, but most people look at and say, well, this is my anchor, this is what I start with. Flip that, and Bitcoin we will measure it in Satoshis. We will measure it in the decimal point of Bitcoin instead of the dollar. And at that point, everything is changed. As Saylor says, all your models are destroyed, right? It's just we're now using something completely different. And so your life and the world looks completely different.
Yeah, it's once I am all for Bitcoin. Now, my wife, she has a 401k, and that is actually money she's earned. So I'm a married man. I don't let my wife
Don't let her do anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
She does what she wants.
Right. And I told her, hey, you do you, baby. And she's a lot less risk. She has a lower risk tolerance than I do. And
Yeah.
so she has, stocks and shit like that she owns. And as for me, I'm all in Bitcoin, right? In fact, a majority of our family wealth is in actual cryptos and Bitcoin. And as for my company, how I've structured each of our clubs, I run a venture capital fund. And what I figured out was there's a new system, and every company is going to adopt this system. Where as we go through this transition, you can actually launch a company with $100,000. All right, even if it's a smaller business with maybe be something like 25 grand. Right. Here's the example I usually give people. Each one of our clubs, I put $150,000 in a wallet for each of the clubs for their advertising budget. Well, this is what I call the perpetual growth business model. We know that the price of actual Bitcoin is very cyclical. And anything that is cyclical is relatively plannable. You can plan inside.
You can forecast. Yeah.
Right. You can forecast, and then you can adjust as every day happens. And so what I did was each of the clubs, I allocate $150,000 towards advertising capital. And what I do is every single month or 6 weeks, I take I take $10,000 out of that Bitcoin, and I put it towards that month or 6 week advertising budget. And this has worked out perfect since I've done.
Yeah.
Is as the price of the Bitcoin goes up, once it hits 150,000, I'm holding in that wallet again. I launch another marketing campaign.
Yeah.
And I just rinse and repeat.
Yep.
Where that wallet always has $150,000 in it. But I'm using the gain of price in Bitcoin to actually pay for the advertising of each of the clubs without losing a dollar value each time I do it. So it's free marketing.
Yep. So that is a strategy I fell into almost accidentally, right? So I was listening to the first, What is Money podcasts, like 1 through 8 or 9 or whatever it was with Saylor. And man, that and the Bitcoin Standard were beasts, right? I was on, I couldn't listen to those while I was just, on a walk or working out or something like that. I literally had to be in front of my laptop or on a computer because it's like I was Googling terms, right? It's like, I don't know anything about Austrian economics. I don't know anything. So it's like, as he would bring up civilizations and like, I'd make notes and be like, oh, I want to study, that battle that he mentioned or whatever with the Romans and the Spartans, it's like all this stuff. But I stumbled across that accidentally because I was just so tired, fed up of inflation that I just decided, well, it's like, well, what happens if I just put all of my money, if I liquidate everything and I put it in Bitcoin? What happens? So I started looking at that. And then a few people, I started to see these trends and those cycles. And I was very blessed, I think. The time that I came in and really went completely orange was around the end of 2022. So right during the downturn of that last bear cycle, right? And I watched it go down, and I was sort of DCAing. I was buying dollar cost averaging, buying a little bit on the way down, and then it hit 20. And I thought psychologically, the number 20,000 to me seemed like less than a third of the all-time high at that point. And I was like, I want to go all in, right? So I took all my cash and went in, then sweated as it went down to 15. And I thought, Bitcoin's going to die. Bitcoin's dead. I have lost, 25% of what little money I had. This was a dumb idea, right? But then we got through Christmas and we got through New Year's, and by like my birthday's in February. By February, around the time of my birthday, we had crawled back up, and we were already at like 22, 23. And my entry average cost at the time was sub 20. It's like 18,000. And I was like, okay, we're moving. I was like, in a fiat world, I'd have been happy with that, right? I'd have cashed out and been happy with that. But because it's a different mindset, it's that HODL mindset. It was like, okay, well, what else can I do? So then I keep stacking and I keep stacking, and things would come up, like, something at your house breaks, or you need new water heater, you need new washer dryer or whatever. Okay, well, you cash it out, but that it cost me less, right? So Preston Pish did a really good example of this on his podcast when he talks about valuing homes in Bitcoin. You look at the value of the home in dollars has gone up, and at the same time the value in dollars has gone up, the amount of Bitcoins it takes to buy a house has gone down. So it's that gap is even bigger than people realize. It's not just the dollars going up, or the value of Bitcoin going up and it's even, right? It's like not even saying, okay, 1 Bitcoin is this and we'll buy you a house, and then 1 Bitcoin will buy you a house, and then 1 Bitcoin will buy you a house, right? It's literally 1 Bitcoin will buy you, or 10 Bitcoin will buy you a house. Now, now 5 Bitcoin will buy you a house, even though the value's gone up. It's crazy, right? So looking at that, I was like, that's kind of what I experienced on a smaller scale. Is I looked back and said, okay, well, if I bought Bitcoin at 18,000 and I just had to cash out a whole Bitcoin, or I had to cash out 18,000, but Bitcoin's now at 36,000, right? That only cost me, that purchase I made only cost me $9,000 in US money, US dollar. But I still have half of the Bitcoin I bought. You know what I mean? So it's like once you start to kind of do that, look at it that way, you're like, well, this makes perfect sense. So now Bitcoin was not an investment. It is officially, at that point in my life, it's a money. It is the money. And it is, and I use it as such. So it's not an investment. It's a savings account, right? It actually plays the role of both of those, which means I don't have to think anymore. I don't have to, let's not, attack your wife by any means at all, right? Let's not try to orange pill her or anything. But I went through that exercise the way that she thinks. And I thought to myself, okay, what's the absolute best I can do, right? Well, if you look at the S&P 500, if you really look at it based on it and you apply inflation to it, it's really flatline, right? They say it's gone up and up and up and everybody's doing it. You're not really doing any better, right? You're actually just maintaining the same level. Everybody dumps their liquidity into that, but if you're putting trash in, you still have trash out at the end, right? So it's like, so they're putting in, and you really only have, and they're like, well, yeah, but I'm spreading it over, 500 stocks. Well, you're spreading it over 6 or 7 stocks that have like 90% of the value of the S&P, all the big ones. And the rest of it is just junk, right? So even if you do stay with just those big ones, they're still not outpacing Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is still outpaced it. It is the number one. So even if you're looking at it from an investment standpoint, Bitcoin is still the smarter play. Then if you look at, you're like, well, I've got 401ks, I've got matching, I've got this or that or whatever. The second you can transfer that out, you can call somebody like Swan or Unchained Capital, and you can convert that. You have to cash it out, but you can immediately cash it back into self-custodial or self-custody Bitcoin, right? And it qualifies under a 401k. So there's no income tax on that or capital gains tax if you leave it there till what's the age, 65, 67 and a half, whatever that number. What basically those rules apply to that, right? So it's I did all that. And I realized I don't want to be in anything else. And like Michael Saylor said, you don't trade. The only reason I don't hold Bitcoin is if I have to have the cash to spend at that exact moment. Otherwise, I store 100% of my cash in Bitcoin because you don't ever, if you have the first place horse, you don't ever trade it in for something is going to come in second, third, fourth, fifth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually exactly what Michael Saylor says. He's like, why would you trade in a winner for a loser?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I got to diversify. So you're gonna sell the best in order to buy the second best.
And I love his diversification. Just, when he talks about that, right? It's like, are you, hey, you're talking on a microphone right now. Why do you only have one? Why don't you have 7? Why do you need more than one chair? You've only got one ass, so why would you need more than one chair?
Yeah.
It's like, it's that kind of mentality, right? And once you figure that out, that changes everything in your life. You look at everything in your life differently, which is great.
The really, really good one he uses is when you go on vacation. Does all of your family fly on one airline?
Yeah.
Or do you send one in American Airlines, one in, the Southwest?
Yeah.
Why do you centralize and risk your family on one airplane?
Sure. Well, putting all your eggs in one basket is the most secure way to make sure you're the only one that's, controlling your eggs. It's the whole reason why we have self-custody, right? It's like, I don't want anyone else telling me what to do with my money. I mean, you talk to, see the Canadian truckers, right? BJ Dick is, his story is amazing, right? So it's like, you talk about all that stuff. And, the problem is too many people have control of what I say and do. And when it comes to the money, it's, that's where you're most vulnerable,
Yeah. Hang on one second. I love these questions. We have a question. Hi. Why BTC not going up? I originally bought Bitcoin when it was $600. It's now almost $70,000. What do you mean not going up?
Yeah, you're literally a 100x at this point.
Yeah, it's like looking at your child at the age of 3 and saying, "Why not in college yet?"
Right. Yeah. It's like
it's really.
This is the beauty of math, and the beauty of this connection that Bitcoin has to energy. Right. Something either is when matter can either be created or destroyed. Something either is or it isn't. right? So something either is there or it's not. And so it's either this form or it's this form, but it can't be both, right? So don't get me wrong, there's some interesting things happening in, quantum mechanics and quantum computing where things move so fast they look like they're in two places at once. But for the bulk of the universe, right, things are either there or they're not. Yeah, that would be like asking, what is it? I've heard some, conservative guys say basically, okay, well, you're, when they're talking about someone saying, well, I can decide if I'm male or female, and say, they say, okay, well, how old are you? And they're like, well, 19. Well, why aren't you 60? And they say, well, because I can't, right. You can't be 60 and 19 at the same time. Right. So Bitcoin was $600, right? I wish I paid attention when it was 600, but I didn't, right? We all get the Bitcoin price we deserve. Someone told me about it in 2013, 2014. I had free electricity at an office space, and I had at least a dozen computers with those 480 graphics cards. I could have been mining. Now ASICs were already kind of making, whatever, a little bit, S9s were out, but I could have been, mining something, anything.
Yeah.
And someone told me about it, and I just said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's never going to work, right? And so, but now it's like, okay, well, Bitcoin's 60,000 now. 60,000 is the new 600.
Yes.
Right? So,
yes.
and how long ago was that, Ben? How many years ago was that? 8
years
9?
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So like 8 years ago. So it's 2024. In 2032, we will be talking about why is Bitcoin not going up, and the price will be $600,000.
Oh, it'll be. Yeah.
Right. I mean, or whatever it is, we'll
Yeah.
look at it and be like, do you remember how awesome it was when Bitcoin was 60,000? I wish we'd I wish we got it.
It's everyone who you talked to in friggin' Bitcoin.
Mhm.
The one thing we all say, I wish I would have bought more.
Yeah. I mean, if I were fantasizing about, time travel, right? I'd want to go all the way back to, 2007, 2008, and basically learn to code, join cypherpunks, and start, following that trend and realizing that, start, Adam Back and all those guys, whatever, and try to be a part of it, right? That's what, if you fantasize about those kinds of things, like, a few years before I, found Bitcoin, it was like, go back to when I was in high school and start working with the Google guys, or, or go all the way back to the late 80s and start working with Microsoft or Apple, right? It's like the only regret I have is just not getting into it sooner. So today, whatever the price is today, is your sooner. That's it. And so, and I talked to a lot of people who are like, yeah, but it's so volatile. And I said, well, not if you look at it over a 4-year term. Just look at it over a cycle.
The argument of volatility has always annoyed me because everyone focuses on the price. Everyone is interested initially in Bitcoin because of the amazing gains that they've seen other people get. Then when you ask them, why aren't you buying it? Oh, the volatility. Sir, man, the reason you're interested in it is because of the volatility up.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. I have lots of people that said, no, it's too volatile. When I talked to them in 2022, when it was down around 15, 16,000, and I said, I think this is close to the bottom. Like, this is it. Like this, whoever it was on Rogan's podcast, I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah.
Right? That was like, it's going to trade negative. I'm never going to have to pay somebody to take my Bitcoin. That's dumb, right? Like, it either has some sort of, it's, again, that goes along with the law of thermodynamics. Something either is or it isn't, right? It's like, you either have something of value or you have something that has no value. There's never a negative. So that shows you just how irrational those arguments are when they talk about the volatility. Not to mention the fact that the best traders in the world, which is probably like the 3 to 5% of traders, especially in the US, that actually make money, right? Whereas like 95% of the traders lose money. Those guys want volatility, right? If I'm trading options,
that's what they live on.
That's what they live on. You live on the volatility. You want it to swing low, and then you buy like, a heavy position in call options, and then it swings even just a tiny bit up, and then all of a sudden, options are a multiplier of that tiny little bit of the stock swings, right? So it's like you want something with wild volatility, and then it goes super high, and then you buy those puts, you sell it, and you buy those puts and watch it come back down, and that's all they do is they ride that wave up and down. But it's we're emotional beings, and so we make emotional, illogical decisions on it, right? So one of the most interesting things about Bitcoin to me was that it forced me to make, in a time in my life when I was very emotional, because I was stressed out, because I didn't know what was causing all of this stress and what was stealing my wealth. Once you figure it out and you have a plan on how to combat that, all of a sudden you get calm, you can make more logical decisions, you can be smarter. And that's a really interesting connection from all of this money and this volatility. And now it's to a point where it's like, oh, Bitcoin dipped down to 58,000, it was at 72,000 a month ago. Bitcoin's at 30,000. It was at, 68,000. It's at 20,000. It was at 68,000. It's like once you understand that process, the psychology and the emotional side of it doesn't work on you anymore.
Yeah, I was over at a lecture over in the UK, and this was in 2018 or 2019. They put me on a panel with a bunch of executives of like some big banks. And initially they were all, kind of making fun of me and like, oh, we have a crypto guy on the panel. At the end of the panel, number one, 3 of those executives offered me a job.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them could not answer very fundamental questions in the flaws of the Keynesian economic system.
Sure.
And I said, so you admit your system has flaws? Well, every system has flaws. No. An airplane flies because it is a sealed system. A submarine works because it doesn't have a leaking flaw. It doesn't let water in.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, and they explain like volatility. And I said, look, what you guys are missing is you're looking at purely a numbers-based event where I'm showing you a mode of transportation and human evolution event. I said, all right, when you first get your driver's license, a car is a volatile piece of machinery.
I've got a 17-year-old. I can attest to that. Yeah. It's very volatile.
And so when you're first learning how to drive, the volatility of the automobile scares the hell out of you. You're like, this could happen, or this could happen, or this. There's so many outside factors.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get used to the volatility of a vehicle, you're driving it with your knee while you're eating a cheeseburger. And that is the hodl mentality you eventually reach. Well, the old lady next to you is up to the steering wheel,
Right.
and she's nervous while you're sitting there driving with your knee, eating a cheeseburger, flipping radio stations. And what you've learned is to accept the volatility, and you've understood the probabilities of threat. So you realize after a while, odds are I'm not going to get hit, and I'm not going to hit something.
Right.
So once you have that realistic view of probability, then your nervousness drops to zero, and you hodl easily because you no longer have that threat of the illusion of volatility.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't matter how much cash I had in my, bank account, liquid, available, money to spend in my bank account. I almost always would stress over, the next big thing that was going to come take a swing at me and hit me and knock me out. Right. It's like I felt like at any given second, I was, one bad decision away from my life just crumbling. And once I made that turn into Bitcoin and decided I was just moving everything over, I slept like a baby. Right. Like when you realize what the banks can do, like Operation Choke Point, right? If they say, well, we're gonna just, we're gonna work with Visa or MasterCard, and we're gonna make it illegal for, people in Texas to buy more than $100 worth of, beef or steak or whatever, or groceries or whatever. They can do that, right? They did that with the Canadian truckers, right? People were trying to send them money, electronic wires, and they would basically, oh, you need to get that, Ben?
No, I'm good.
Just messing with you. But they, they were trying to wire money, and then they wouldn't let them have it in their bank accounts, right? That's just because too many people are touching my money. And so with this, it's like, don't get me wrong, it's responsibility, right? Like if I lose my, if I'm on a single sig wallet and I lose my seed phrase, right? Okay. And if I'm not running my own node or, managing my own lightning channels, then, I am dependent upon the network and somebody else out there or whatever. But if you want to, you run your own node, you manage your own lightning channels, and then you have your cold storage, right? And then you have your self-sovereign, lightning wallet, your, custodial, self-custodial lightning wallet. It's not really a lot of that people can do. I mean, they'd have to get physically violent and threaten me and my loved ones, for me to give that up. So, and luckily I'm in Texas and, have a lot of guns in my house. So there's not a lot that they can really do. And that's what's scaring them. But I think that's also eventually been like what you said with Trump earlier. That's also eventually what will win everybody over. Eventually everyone realizes they can't beat Bitcoin. You just, you can't. You would have to basically, I love this argument from when I'm having a conversation with someone who thinks it's a scam. And they say, well, what happens if, an EMP, nukes us back to the Stone Age? And I was like, well, how much cash do you have? How much gold buried in your backyard do you have, right? It's all digital cash. It doesn't matter. So the only way for them to cripple our system is to cripple their system as well. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and that whole idea of what if the whole internet goes down? What if we're nuked? What if, folks, if we're nuked, or if the whole grid goes down, all right, I have a bunch of silver. All right, I own it. a lot of silver.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's gonna give a fuck about my silver.
No.
No one's gonna give a fuck about my gold.
No.
What they're gonna give a fuck about is my freezer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're gonna give a fuck about
My generator,
water,
my power generator, my water, my gas to be able to cook food, all this, or charcoal or wood or whatever. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, that's it's. I mean, when Saylor talks about it, he's like, it doesn't really. It's like what is power and what is control? Well, it's actually water, right? Like you can use water for hydroelectricity. You can use water. It means there's life. You can catch fish. You can survive. You can drink it. It's like all this stuff or whatever. So it's like ultimately when it comes down to it, people are like, well, what happens if they, what happens if they make your money illegal in the U.S.? Well, they really can't, and I think they know that at this point. And if they can, and to be honest with you, I mean, they can shut your money off faster than they can shut my money off. So it's it's an interesting place to be. The only thing that it gets, and we're slowly bridging that gap. I think I just saw Strike is kind of integrating some new features, and there's a number of others or whatever. But really, the on-ramp, off-ramp is the only challenge that you have right now. So if I'm putting 100% of my money in Bitcoin, being able to cash it out, but the good news is, digital reach and Bitcoin reaches globally. So if I need to get, US dollars for my Bitcoin, I can get it. It doesn't really matter, where it is or how I get it, what country it's in and things like that. So, but the challenge right now is living on a Bitcoin standard in a fiat world. So that's kind of the challenge right now, I think.
Yeah. And the rate of adoption, this is what I'm trying to scream from the mountaintops. We are at a point where we are at the beginning of the global corporate adoption into the integration into the global plumbing system of the exchange of value. The global corporate exchange of value plumbing system is a $400 trillion market.
Mm-hmm.
No one in that market trusts anyone else in that market.
Mm-hmm.
Russia doesn't trust America. America doesn't trust Russia. China doesn't trust Japan. Japan doesn't trust Indonesia. No one trusts no one.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing they'll agree on is something that you don't need trust to interact with.
Yeah.
And folks, there's only one horse in that race.
Yeah.
Bitcoin could get on its hands and knees and run this race and win it because it's the only horse in the race.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we have ETFs, we have governments that are literally actually basing their taxation of their citizens off of future production of fucking Bitcoin is totally mind bending.
Yeah.
Because then you remove your citizens as slaves out of it.
Yeah.
If you can literally take your nation's natural resources and instantly transform that energy from a volcano energy into labor energy to build a road, you're literally building roads with volcano heat.
Yeah. This is what, so I think I mentioned this on the panel, right? Like the ideal way, if I like to use Uber, right? Like if I get a ride somewhere and then let's say it takes a gallon of gas, let's say that thing, the car runs.
That was a great example.
Yeah. Yes. Let's say the car runs at 25 miles to the gallon and I need to ride 25 miles. It takes them a gallon of gasoline to get there, right? Or, whatever the electrical charge is, if it's an EV or whatever. The ideal way for me to pay them would be for me to carry around 1.2 gallons of gas and give them 1.2 gallons of gas. So by the time I get there, they actually have more gas than when they started, right? That's what profit is. That's what commerce is, right? That's what they're doing, is trying to make money on top of that. The problem is right now we have a system where I give him 1.2 gallon of gas, and at the end of the year, that 1.2 gallons of gas is only worth like 0.9 gallons of gas, right? So it's like you're losing that money due to inflation and the monetary policy. Bitcoin, because it's so closely related, because of its proof of work, it's so closely related to energy, it's so closely related to time. There's only so much Bitcoin that can be, that like Bitcoin is going to be, regardless of who's mining it, right? You could cut the amount of hash rate in half, global hash rate in half, and every 10 minutes there will still be 3.125 Bitcoin produced, right, in this current epoch. So you're looking at that and thinking, this is the best store of energy and time we have. So if I give somebody Bitcoin, I know that next year, one whole Bitcoin is still going to be one Bitcoin. It's not going to be 0.9 Bitcoin. Every dollar I give to somebody next year is going to be $0.9. That's the trade-off. You got a question there that you put up?
Yeah. And once in a while, I read something over in the chat that I just got to throw out here. Edward says you can't beat Bitcoin. Try telling that to those who have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin to hackers. Yes, long-term food storage is virtual. Right, Edward.
Is this Edward or is it Dave Portnoy?
No, yeah.
Is this his pseudonym? This is Dave Portnoy's pseudonym, I think.
I love you, Ed. You know I do. But that is like when you're playing football and you fumble the football. That's the equivalent of blaming the football.
And not picking it up, not trying to pick it up and run back with it again. We all fumble the football.
Well,
we all do. Yeah, it's inevitable.
It's if you were hacked, that doesn't mean Bitcoin was hacked. Right. If you fumbled the football, that doesn't mean the football fumbled itself. All right. It's we're transitioning into a system of responsibility.
Bingo.
Right. So many people are spoiled in slavery, right? The safest place you can be is in a prison cell. And like I've said, though, if you're the richest person in jail, you're still in jail, right? So if you're the richest person in the old system, you're the richest person in jail. When you're the richest person in Bitcoin, you're free.
Yeah.
and that, but with that freedom comes responsibility, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I've equated leaving the old system is like moving out of your parents' house for the first time. You move out, you're excited. Bitcoin. But then you realize all of the lies your parents told you, because you look back and you didn't hear the arguments where the electric was about to get turned off because mom or dad didn't get the hours they needed from their job. You didn't hear the conversations of, shit, we need a new roof. How are we going to afford this? You didn't hear all of the negatives of the everyday life of that old secure system you thought you lived in. Right? When you look back on living with your parents, we all say, boy, I wish I could go back to those days. But what you don't realize is those days were rough days.
They were just as difficult as your days are now. The numbers are just different. The decimal point is moved, but everything else is still the same.
And they're your problems now. Your mom and dad aren't dealing and shielding you from the everyday problems. That's the old system. The old system has us brainwashed that everything's fine. Everything's fine. When really your mom and dad are in a panic trying to figure out how to feed your ass on Friday. All right?
Yep. It's that self-responsibility. It's funny you said, being the richest guy in prison, you're still in prison. You can be the poorest guy in Bitcoin and be freer than the richest guy in prison.
Yep.
Right? You can have whatever, and people tell me it's like, oh, it's too expensive. It's whatever you want it to be. You don't have to have a whole Bitcoin, right? So just whatever you feel comfortable with. Start learning, start figuring it out. Hey Ben, I've got to hop here pretty quick.
Oh,
what do we want to do obviously you're going to keep going. You never stop. You're going to keep going. What do you need from me to wrap up here?
Where can people reach you? Yeah, I'll go on forever, brother. We'll be here till Friday.
I know.
Right?
So I'm most active on Twitter, just at David Branscombe. My avatar, or I guess my pseudonym on there, is Rebel Mining in Texas, but don't search Rebel Mining in Texas because the B is a Bitcoin logo. So when you search it, you'll never find it. Just at David Branscombe. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. And I'm currently working with a couple of energy companies, Vea and Scout Energy, where we basically source power for off-grid power production for Bitcoin miners and traditional data centers and other things like that. So trying to get you, if you want to be vertically integrated, own your own power source and mine Bitcoin, you can reach out to me, and we probably have spots that will fit kind of what you're looking for. So
okay, awesome, brother. Thank you for your time, and I will definitely have you back on.
Ben, I look forward to it, man. It was really great to meet you in Miami. Love what you're doing. Been following you for a little while, so it was good to actually get to meet you in person. And anytime I can, help out with anything you guys are doing, let me know.
Absolutely, brother. All right, you have a great day. All
right, thanks.
All right, bye-bye. All right, guys and gals, it's people like him, and he did such a great job at that event in Miami at the Bitcoin Day. And heads up, guys, I'm going to get on a call with the Bitcoin Day guys And I'm actually going to partner with them. And we're having an event at a Trump location. So just watch out for that in the future. Everyone have a great day. Enjoy your day. And remember the troops. All right. Remember why we're celebrating. Everyone have a great day. Love of you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.